consider yourself an artist or a creative person, then you're probably familiar with the feeling of artist block. It's when you feel like you can't work on anything, you can't think of new ideas, and you don't even know how to start. So if you're willing to get imaginative with me today, I'm going to be personifying my artist block as characters to try and better understand the forces that are working in my mind when I don't feel like creating. I got this idea from a YouTuber called Struthless. He's a huge creative inspiration to me, and I'll link his video in the description box if you'd like to watch that as well. The first one I'm starting with is perfectionism. And today I'm working with gouache on watercolor paper. Gouache is a paint that's kind of in between watercolor and acrylic paint. Originally, I decided that she needed to have scrutinizing eyes that are looking for mistakes to capture that pin-pricking criticism that I feel when perfectionism strikes. I got to this point and then ironically realized that I wasn't happy with it and I started again. She looked way too friendly. I experimented with some sketches and poses, trying to explore the way that it makes me feel. This little guy was way too cute. What I ended up with was inspired by Tim Burton and the other mother from Coraline to give that kind of horror feel. In reality, perfectionism is debilitating and it makes me feel very small and hopeless. I guess in this painting process, I realized that perfectionism is really good at tricking me into thinking that the criticism is coming from a good place. Which is why I imagined her having this very human mask to begin with. I wanted her to appear somewhat humanoid to reflect how she originally tricked me into thinking she was less sinister than she actually was. But at her core, there's this coldness. She hates mistakes, even though mistakes are an unavoidable part of the creative process. I was also really drawn to the colouring of carnivorous plants, that electric green and red. Perfectionism pretends to be helpful, but it's actually very, very destructive. Hence the magnifying lenses for scrutinising and blades for dissecting. The main feelings I feel when this character appears are fears of not being good enough. And the feeling usually strikes right before I'm about to start a new project. In some cases, the thoughts will sound like, wait until you have a better camera, or you can't create this yet, wait until you have better materials, all justifications to make me put off working on it now. This is a lie, of course, because the conditions for creating are never going to be 100% perfect. Instead, I've been keeping in mind the 70% rule, which is, can I make it 70% perfect? This removes the pressure of perfectionism and it allows me the freedom to make some mistakes or be a little bit messy so that I can create and express myself with less anxiety about the end result. I'm not 100% happy with how this one turned out finished, but I learned a lot during the process about how my perfectionist thoughts have stopped me from creating in the past, so that I can identify perfectionist thoughts in the future and call them out for what they are. At the end of the day, I create things because it feels good to express myself, and there's no point in creating something physically perfect if I didn't enjoy the process. The next portrait is my people-pleasing tendencies. They want me to please everyone and make me think about the audience's perspective and how the art will be received. This, of course, stops me from creating authentically and being myself. The main identifying factor about people-pleasing is that it comes from a place of fear instead of a place of love. When I create my art from a place of fear of rejection, I'm assuming how the audience will respond to it and changing the art to be unprovocative and palatable. There are actually lots of videos I made in the past that weren't actually myself, but I made them because I thought it was what the audience wanted to see or what would perform well. But the fear of showing my real personality means that I struggle to create art for the sake of creating art, because I'm always thinking about how it will be perceived instead. Since I started becoming aware of the people-pleasing thoughts, I've been enjoying creating way more, and I'm able to feel proud of what I created because it feels authentic. I found that the best way to sense out which thoughts are being inspired by people-pleasing is to work on trusting my intuition in all areas of my life. When you become more reliant on your intuition, you can feel when you aren't doing something authentically, and this has been the best way I've found to test whether what I'm making is really me or not, by trusting that gut feeling. The motif I felt most drawn to was one of those mannequin foam heads with the long neck, but then also a disco ball. The mannequin is casting all these reflections of other people's desires, criticisms, and beliefs, and she thinks that the distorted reflections are her own thoughts. Now that I understand this character a little better, I'm able to better discern which thoughts are authentic, and it's been infinitely more rewarding to make things that feel like myself, instead of just what other people want to see. The third character is dissociation. Everyone dissociates during the day for short periods of time where you zone out and then you suddenly wonder, wait, how did I get here? And that's pretty normal, but it can be quite scary when you realize that your body has been on autopilot for a long period of time. Dissociation and derealization is something I've actually been dealing with in my life for a long time, and fortunately it's gotten a lot better with therapy and coping strategies. Sometimes I get ready to do some art and then find myself laying in bed watching Netflix, and it's somehow been 5 hours. When I'm in a dissociative trance, I don't realize until I come out of it, so it's been quite hard to pin down what's actually triggered it so that I can stop that from happening. From the research I've done, dissociation is an adaptive defense strategy that the brain will do sometimes to cope with an overwhelming threat that cannot be prevented or escaped. Sometimes dissociation will creep up on me in my everyday life in weird little ways, and it affects me from being able to do my art. Dissociation in my creative practice usually appears when I feel resistance or difficulty and my mind shuts off. I'll then be distracted by something mindless, like binging bad TV shows that have a lot of seasons, or just sleeping to fill in the time. For this character, I wanted to portray the gloominess, the lethargic and weighed down feeling, and how it kind of feels like being hypnotized. Like how when you sit underwater and time just feels like it slows down. Creating these paintings ended up being an accidental shadow work exercise. It helped me to deep dive into my consciousness and try and untangle which thoughts come from where. It's hard to describe how to do this process because it's different for everyone, but basically if you turn your attention inwards, you can begin to recognize patterns in the thoughts that come up. I identified all the different thoughts that stopped me from being able to do my art, and then from there I was able to narrow them down to 3 distinct characters, which is how I came up with the perfectionism, people-pleasing and dissociation. I guess the common theme between all of them is fear. Fear is the enemy of self-expression, so if you want to tackle fear within yourself, making messy art that you know might not be 100% perfect or might not be what other people want to see is an amazing way to show love to yourself. This video ended up being a lot more deep and honest than I expected it was going to be when I started filming it. However, if you struggle with artist block, I'd highly recommend you try these exercises. Personifying them as characters allows me to better see where the thoughts come from so that I can identify them in the future and be kind to myself. The perfectionist part of my brain right now is freaking out that this video is way too vulnerable to put out there. But I want to create a space on my channel where it's safe for us to talk about mental health with each other. And I think art is very connected to how we understand ourselves and our mental health. So it's a fantastic tool for mindfulness. If you want to write about your artist block, feel free to in the comments section. And if you make an artwork or a video exploring this, please let me know so that I can see it. I would love to see it. If you're still watching, thank you so much for your open-mindedness and for coming on this journey with me. And I'll see you in my next video.